Julius Erving had everything: the slam dunks, the highlight reels, the championship rings. But what he also had was a vision, foresight, and the ability to create a legacy that outlived his playing career. When we talk about that intersection of sports and business, when we talk about athletes who truly understood that their time in a uniform was only one chapter of their lives, few names shine brighter than Dr. J. Most people know Julius Erving as one of the most electrifying and graceful players in NBA history. His aerial artistry defined a generation. His style inspired Michael Jordan and countless others. And his ability to merge flair with fundamentals helped usher in the modern era of basketball. But what fewer people know is that while Erving was dazzling fans on the court, he was also plotting something just as important: his future off it. And in 1985, while he was still an active player, Julius Erving made history by stepping into a business venture that was groundbreaking not only for him personally, but for black ownership in America at large. Let's rewind to that moment in time. It's the mid-1980s. Julius Erving is in his 14th professional season. He's already an NBA champion, a perennial all-star, and a global superstar. He has nothing left to prove as a basketball player. But Erving understood something that a lot of athletes didn't. Longevity in sports doesn't equal longevity in life. He knew his career was coming to an end, and he wasn't about to sit back and watch his financial stability he worked hard for vanish. So in 1985, Erving took a bold step. He became a majority owner of the Philadelphia Coca-Cola bottling company. The significance of this move cannot be overstated. This was the first black-owned Coca-Cola bottling franchise in the world. Let that sink in for a second. Not just in Philadelphia, not just in the United States, but in the world. At the time, the company was valued at an astonishing $100 million, which made it the fourth largest black-owned company in the entire country. And here was Dr. J, not just attaching his name as a celebrity investor, but stepping into a real position of ownership and influence. This was uncharted territory for athletes at the time. Now think about what this meant in 1985. This wasn't the NBA of today, where stars have multi-million-dollar shoe deals, billion-dollar social media brands, or teams of financial advisors at their disposal. This was the 1980s, where the average player wasn't thinking about life after basketball, and when the league itself wasn't nearly as global or lucrative as it is now. For Julius Erving to step into the role of a majority owner of a Coke franchise, it was revolutionary. And it sent shockwaves throughout both the sports and business world. Dr. J wasn't just a basketball legend anymore. He was a businessman with real stakes in one of the most recognizable brands on the planet. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The Coke franchise wasn't an isolated investment. It wasn't just a one-off headline. It was part of a much bigger picture that revealed who Julius Erving really was. A man who saw himself not just as an athlete, but as an entrepreneur, an innovator, and a leader. Let's take a look at Erving's broader business portfolio, because it paints a picture of a man who was not only smart with his money, but also forward-thinking in ways that most athletes of his time couldn't even imagine. In 1990, just a few years after the Coca-Cola move, Erving founded the Erving Group, Inc. This wasn't a vanity company. It was a consulting and investment firm that specialized in helping both startups and established businesses grow. The idea that an athlete, especially in the 1990s, would be spearheading business solutions, that was unheard of. But for Dr. J, it was just the natural progression of his journey. He also co-founded Q&A, Venice Music, a company at the intersection of technology and entertainment. And remember, this was decades before tech startups became the go-to move for athletes. Today, we see guys like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Andre Iguodala making tech investments. But Dr. J was doing this when the landscape was far less accessible and far less mainstream. And then there's his move into gaming. Many of you might remember the iconic video game Dr. J vs. Larry Bird, one of the earliest basketball video games ever released. Erving could have just taken a paycheck for his likeness, but instead, he made a decision that showed just how sharp he was. He opted for equity. He chose long-term ownership over short-term cash. And that decision reflected his entire philosophy. Don't just take what's given, create something that can grow with you.
So if I was 21 again, and I had an offer from Converse or Spalding or whatever, so I got cash in my pocket. I got enough for food, clothing, and shelter or whatever. And give me equity in the company.
His ventures didn't stop there. Erving got involved in the world of horse racing through the National Thoroughbred League, showing a willingness to explore industries that weren't even directly connected with basketball. He entered real estate, owning both commercial and residential properties in prime areas across the country, understanding that land and property were some of the most reliable paths to long-term wealth. And more recently, he even dipped into digital finance by investing in MobileCoin, a cryptocurrency company. Think about the breadth of that portfolio: beverages, consulting, tech, music, gaming, sports, real estate, and now crypto. Julius Erving wasn't dabbling, he was diversifying. And he was doing it at a time there wasn't really a blueprint for athletes to follow. And that's what made him so admired, not just by fans, but by his peers. Because when we talk about influence, sometimes it's not about what you accomplish, but about what you inspire in others. And one of the athletes most influenced by Julius Erving's business savvy was none other than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan once said that Dr. J was one of the guys he idolized from a business perspective. He literally used Erving's path as a blueprint for his own. And if Michael Jordan, the greatest to ever do it on the court and arguably off it with his Jordan brand empire, if he was inspired by Julius Erving, that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of pioneer Dr. J really was. Now, today Julius Erving's net worth is estimated to be around 50 million. By modern athlete standards, that might not sound astronomical. We live in an era where LeBron James has reached billionaire status, where Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are stacking portfolios worth hundreds of millions. But that's not the point. The point is that Julius Erving did this at a time when those avenues weren't available, when the infrastructure wasn't in place, and when athletes weren't taught financial literacy the way they are now. And that's why his story is so important, because it forces us to ask, why was Dr. J able to see what so many others couldn't? Well, here's the truth. Julius Erving was ahead of his time. He was one of the first athletes to truly understand the importance of financial literacy, of planning for the future, of building a brand and a business that could stand independent of the game itself. While so many athletes of his era were spending their money as fast as they made it, Dr. J was laying foundations that would sustain him for decades. And when you look at the modern NBA, even today, you still see players who haven't learned that lesson. Stories of players going broke after retirement are far too common. Despite all the money, all the resources, all the advisors available, there are still guys who don't think about their post-career life. And that's what makes Erving's foresight so remarkable. He wasn't just thinking about the next contract, he was thinking about the next phase of his life. Another piece of context here is that Dr. J wasn't naive about the fragility of his institutions. Remember, this is a man who lived through the NBA-ABA merger. He was front and center as one league collapsed into another, as franchises folded, as players' careers were disrupted by forces completely outside of their control. And when you've been through something like that, you learn quickly that nothing is guaranteed. Companies rise and fall, industries evolve. The paycheck you think will always be there, it might not be. So when Erving made his moves into Coca-Cola, real estate and beyond, it wasn't just about ambition, it was about sustainability. It was about insulating himself from the volatility of sports and business. He understood, perhaps better than anyone, that long-term wealth isn't about making money, it's about keeping it, protecting it, and growing it in ways that are resistant to the ups and downs of the market. And that's why Julius Erving's story deserves to be told and retold, especially in today's NBA. Because it's not just a story about a great basketball player, it's a story about a man who refused to be boxed in by his profession. A man who used his platform to break barriers in business, to inspire generations of athletes after him, and to remind us all that legacy isn't just what you do in the game, but what you do once the game ends. So as we look back on Dr. J's career, yes, we remember the dunks, the artistry, the championships, but we also need to remember the businessman, the pioneer, the man who bought into a $100 million Coke franchise when nobody thought athletes belonged in the boardroom. The man who chose equity over cash when gaming was in its infancy. The man who showed Michael Jordan, and by extension countless others, that basketball was only the beginning. And maybe the biggest takeaway for us all is this: greatness isn't just about what you accomplish in your prime, it's about what you build for the future. Julius Erving understood that, and that's why his story isn't just about basketball history, it's business history, it's cultural history, and it's a lesson in what it truly means to be ahead of your time. So tell me guys, did you know that Dr. J was such a successful businessman and should have more players taken a leaf out of his book? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Damian Peters, this is Basketball Network, and we'll see you in the next one.